I love stories. Tales of fantasy lands, of beautiful elves living amongst flourishing forests, of adventures through dense jungles and deserts and seas, tales of epic romances and space odysseys, and history reenacted, and worlds where the laws of physics don't make sense, and even tales of everyday, mundane lives. But rarely, very rarely, do I see tales of utopia. And that is a massive problem. I'm a conservation biologist, environmental communicator, and climate emergency outreach officer. And every day through my work, personal life, and on social media, I have to think about the climate and ecological crises. Every day I'm confronted by how the world and its biodiversity and its people are dying as a result of rampant capitalism. How species are going extinct, how people are living with increasing food poverty, how natural disasters as a result of climate change are getting worse. Of course, there are many positive and hopeful actions that I take day to day, but at the end of the day, I'm a dreamer. I want to be able to escape into a better world, when ours at the moment is just not that great. My hunger for realistic utopian fiction has gotten so bad that I've taken to scrolling for hours on end on Instagram Reels to get my 30-second booster shots of women running barefooted through fields and homesteaders tending to their ducks, just to prove to myself that there is a version of reality I can escape into where everything is positive and everything is hopeful. Because here's the thing, even if we only spend our time looking at positive news, or building projects which are beneficial to the world and all of its life, how can we change the world on a global scale without having hopeful stories to escape into and be inspired by and learn from? As Ursula K. Le Guin so rightly put it, we read books to find out who we are. What other people, real or imaginary, do and think and feel is an essential guide to our understanding of what we ourselves are and may become. There's a particular bone I have to pick, and that's with science fiction. I love science fiction. I love witnessing the horrors of advanced artificial intelligence, of giant space battles between oppressed factions and oppressive states, of worlds where people are trapped in underground silos post-climate destruction, or trapped by their own social media score, or trapped in a building surrounded by screens to farm money for the non-existent tiny scrap of a chance of a better life. That last one's a bit too on the nose, right? The thing is, although they are thrilling, these stories only serve to reflect the horrors that are already apparent in the world. I guess that's what makes them so thrilling. We watch or read these stories and think to ourselves, I'm so glad I don't live in a world like that. But then there's still an eerie feeling that lingers, and that's because most of these pieces of fiction draw on realities from our present day. At the end of the day, science fiction is just a path which our current world, with a bit of technological innovation and a short passage of time, could very easily slip into. Black Mirror, one of my favourite series, has a particularly uncanny way of delivering this. I enjoy being horrified. In fact, I feel like it compels me to act more in my real life, to desperately avoid the situations I read about in the pages of a novel. And yet, only being surrounded by negative visions of the future gets really, really tiring. We need more positivity. We need something new. We need science fiction where worlds are filled with hope, worlds which we could actually build and achieve ourselves, where capitalism and authoritarianism and climate destruction are no longer in the picture. There's a particular name for the kind of science fiction that's set in a post-climate destruction, hyper-capitalist future, and it's one you probably all know well: cyberpunk. It's a genre that originated in 1980, but has risen a lot in modern times, due to the popularization of games such as Cyberpunk 2077, and movies such as the reboots of the classic Blade Runner. Cyberpunk is set in a dystopic, near-future Earth, where megacorporations rule the world, cities are dark and punctuated with the neon lights of advertisements, and social inequality is rampant. It's funny because although in some ways Cyberpunk is worlds away from many of our current lives, it's also exceedingly close. In fact, all you'd have to really do is step into Times Square or Piccadilly Circus to feel the concentration of hypercapitalism, and suddenly cyberpunk wouldn't feel so far away. But there is another way we could write stories about the Earth, a new kind of punk. What if future Earth wasn't a dystopic reflection of modern-day hypercapitalism on steroids where technology is used against us, but a colourful utopia where humans live in harmony with the natural world? Welcome Solarpunk, a genre that originated in 2008, focused on rejecting climate doomerism, to build a vision of the future built on renewable energy, decolonialism, and a symbiosis with nature. Solarpunk aesthetic and ideas have been rising rapidly recently as more and more people look for positive and hopeful solutions to our problems. But solarpunk is more than just an aesthetic. It's a political movement, an alternative way of life where we build less hierarchical systems, where communities are resilient and governed through horizontal relationships as in communalism. Solarpunk is, at the end of the day, a deconstruction of capitalism and the creation of a slower, more fulfilling and enjoyable way of living. The problem is we don't have much solarpunk. In fact, the solarpunk films, movies, series, games, books we do have would probably amount to a drop in the ocean of science fiction, let alone all of our fiction. Sure, there are classics that fit the solarpunk theme. Aesthetically, Studio Ghibli movies are a great example of this, such as Nausicaa, Valley of the Winds, Princess Mononoke, or Laputa, Castle in the Sky. And more modern movies such as Black Panther, Wakanda Forever also fit the solarpunk aesthetic. Politically, Ursula K. Le Guin's books also fit the bill, such as The Dispossessed, and Kim Stanley Robinson's books such as New York 2140, although to be clear, I haven't read the latter. But aside from these, most other examples of solarpunk are niche or few and far in between, and even the examples we do have fit solarpunk aesthetically or politically, but don't seem to fit solarpunk as a theme in every way. In essence, we do not have any explicitly and inherently solarpunk examples of fiction as we do with cyberpunk. And this needs to change. To build a better and more ecological world, we need more stories to learn from, movies to feel inspired by, and games to feel activated by. We need to immerse ourselves in a new culture, a culture of hope. So for any artists, writers, filmmakers, game developers, or songwriters, this is your call to develop more hopeful fiction. I want to read it, and I'm sure many do too.